Hello and welcome to this special edition of Southern Circuit. I'm Rickley Stone. This week, Southern Circuit revisits some of the friends we've made on our journeys, beginning with a stop in downtown Tallahassee, where we found some of the area's best musicians performing free of charge as part of a weekly happening at a small club called Radcliffe's. In St. Teresa, Florida, we'll go fishing with a cast net maker and his daughter. Back in Tallahassee, we found a thread to the past at Cascade, a small retail shop specializing in fiber arts. And our journey concludes at Tallahassee's internationally renowned Rose Printing. Thank you for joining us as we take to the road for another journey on Southern Circuit. In the 60s, they called it a happening. That same spirit is still alive today in a little club downtown called Radcliffe's. Each Tuesday night, it's a packed house as local musicians come together to share an evening of folk music, reggae, storytelling, and good times.
Thank you. Thank you. Bless your hearts. Well, good evening. We're glad you're here. We've got another full lineup tonight. Chuck Reitz is going to be with us. Jim Apgar will be up next. Fred Slade is playing tonight. Sally Warner, Johnny Gillum, and Stu Bruner and Mashi will be back later with some steel drum music.
I ran a club in New York that featured music, and in fact there we had auditions frequently on Monday nights in between the regular musician sets. So this thing came out of, partly knowing these musicians and just liking them personally. And part of it was just wanting to do something to maybe bring a few people in on what would normally be a very slow night.
Didn't know what about, but I was feeling quite disturbed.
Generally what happens is if somebody will come in on a Tuesday night and they'll see what's going on, and then they'll either talk to me or they'll talk to Jake about it either that night or sometime during the next week. And then they'll call me, and if we have a slot open for them, then we'll just schedule them a slot, whatever is a convenient time for them.
We've got another one of our regulars back here with us tonight. I think Johnny was here last week, and he's back again with us. Johnny's been with us since the beginning, and does a fine job, a good songwriter and a fine performer. So please make him feel welcome. This is Johnny Gillum.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dale. I'd like to do a song for you that was made famous by a very good friend of all of us, Mr. Pierce Pettis. My grandmother wrote poetry that she rarely let other people read.
We were thinking that it would be, maybe a month, 2-3 months catching on. And about 3 weeks, we had some modest interest in it. And then all of a sudden it took off. And now people come in at 7:30 in order to get a seat at 8 o'clock. And by 8:30 there isn't a seat in the house. And so just to know that only word of mouth, by the way, has done it, created this kind of interest, this kind of excitement is really neat.
She was a poet in her own time.
It's a party. It's a marvelous party. I think the greatest thing that's come out of it is I've made a marvelous group of friends, the musicians in the community, and we all just have a grand time. We work like crazy, keeping everyone happy. It gets a little bit crowded, and we have difficulty accommodating all the people who want to get in. In fact, we've had people turn away because it was too crowded. But that's what it's become for all of us. I think it's just a great party on Tuesday night.
Joni Mitchell's.
We're traveling down that cold town road, listen to my rubber-tied whine. Goodbye to Buckeye and White Sycamore, I'm leaving you behind. Well, I've been a coal man all my life, laying down veins is blue as coal.
Boy, it's magic. It's really magic. There's just a fellowship among all the musicians that play down here. It really goes beyond friendship, because it's when you share something like we share down here, it really is it's a special thing. And the 10 of us who perform down here on a fairly regular basis when we're not working somewhere else or out of town, just have really formed a really special bond between us. And the nice thing about it is we're always open to new people. We're making new friends down here constantly with other musicians as they come in.
We get a lot of people coming back on a regular basis, and they are here primarily to listen to music. We have had nights when there was a lot of conversation. It was a little difficult to hear, but mostly they're just younger adults for the most part who just enjoy being able to sit down in one place and hear a dozen musicians that they normally travel all over town to catch up with.
Well, tonight it's going to be another John Philip Sousa special here. I think this is called Hands Across the Sea. As I've said many times before, they kind of all run together after a while. I'm going to try to do this without benefit of the key on the side here very much, because I've blown the reeds on the top half of this thing.
I travel all over this part of the country. I just got back from New York yesterday from doing a concert up there. And it's amazing the talent that's here in this town. It really is phenomenal. There's so much here, and for some reason people just tend to flock here and stay, although there's really no reason for musicians to be here. There's not a music center of any kind.
Wonder why today's such a special day. Just this morning it was looking like rain. Up in the sky, sunshine in a special way. And if you see it's a sunny day, that's the kind that never stays. Please don't let it slip away again.
This is great. It's somebody really hit the nail on the head last week. They said there in Tallahassee there's really not a central place for artists to congregate, and there's really not a focal point for artists in this community. And this has kind of served that role.
You know, life's a little bit joy, a little bit sorrow. You got dreams and you got hopes for tomorrow. Keep them alive, don't let them die. And keep moving on, keep moving on, keep moving on, keep moving on. No, don't sit down and die. Keep moving on.
methods devised over the centuries to catch fish. None have been around longer, nor served fishermen and fisherwomen quite so well as the art of casting a well-made net. Tallahassee's Cheever Lewis and his daughter Sally have not only been fishing with nets for years, but making their own nets as well.
They don't often bite on hook and line, and when you find the fish there, you don't have to wait for them to bite with a net.
How do you find the fish?
Well, you just go looking, I guess. In shallow water, you can see them or see where they're moving as they swirl. And deep water, sometimes you can see them if the water's clear, and other times you just throw blind and hope they're there. Hello, kitty. I've been throwing since probably 25 years.
What's the most memorable cast you've made?
Probably one in the marina at Alligator Point when I caught about 25, but Sally behind me here has outdone me. I think she caught, how many was it, Sally? 38 in one throw in there.
38 mullet, yeah, that was kind of a freak thing. We were over at the marina, and I had not seen one mullet all day long, and I was getting ready to go home, and thought I'd just unload the net and threw right in the mouth of the marina, and thought I'd hooked up on something and caught something on the bottom because I couldn't pull it up. And it took 3 of us to pull it up over the bulkhead. There was a lot of fish. Yeah.
We started coming down here when I was 13, and in those days there were commercial fishermen who fished right off the beach down about where the dock is now. And there was no need for us to catch fish. They brought them to the front door every morning about before sunup, just about. But starting in about the late 50s or early 60s, they weren't as readily available, the fish weren't, because there weren't as many fishermen around. And we started trying to find a way to get mullet on our own and bought a cast net. And after we used it a while, we decided we'd make our own.
Ideally, if you were really going to go at the best time of the day, you'd get up early in the morning and like right at daybreak when it's real still and come out either wading in the shallow water or throw off the dock, because that's when you can see them the best, because the water's calm and you can see the swirls. And that's what you look for. You either look for them jumping or you look for them swirling, or you actually see them, especially when you're up on the dock, you can see them very easily in the water. And just stalk them and throw them.
Dan, a net's not very hard to throw. It just takes a little practice in handling it. But they start out by coiling your hand line in your left hand. And when you reach the net, you continue to coil the net just as you did the hand line until you reach the part of the net where you want to hold your top hand. And then place that part of the net in your left hand. Some people like to throw with the lead line in the teeth to hold it back. I prefer to put it over my shoulder. It makes it easier to get into the net. As usual, I've got a tangle in it. And then pick up with your hand just inside the lead line, inside the net, and just flip it around, trying to get knots out as you go. Until you have approximately half of it in each hand. I generally end up with a little more than half in my right hand, about half in my left hand, and I catch the net down about a foot above the lead line, and then pick the other side, what I've had in my left hand, and drop my left hand so it's down together with the right hand. And I have them right together, as you can see. And I catch the lead line in my little finger. And the purpose of that is as I throw it, I hold back that part of the net. So the lead edge of the net goes out and gets away from me. And this holds the back end of it behind so I get a good spread. And then from there on out, it's just a simple little rhythm to flip the net out. You don't really have to throw hard.
We grew up down here and we did all the things that Daddy did, and he just told us how to do it, and we picked up on it. I didn't do real well at all until Daddy started making these monofilament nets. When we used the old nylon nets, I never could get an open cast, but I kept trying because it was fun. The first time I caught anything was probably back when I was in high school. Like I said, I threw for years before I caught anything. And I was over off the diving board at the old Camp Weed dock and threw the lousiest cast I think I've ever thrown and finally caught a mullet.
Redfish, maybe?
Flounder.
Flounder? That's what they do. Catch anything this way you throw your net, as long as it's not so big that you tear your net up or roll out of the net. A fish too big in one of these nets will drop through the middle because unless it's wedged into the bag properly. In a long braille net, you can catch a bigger fish. And the largest fish I ever caught in one was about an 8-pound redfish.
What's the most unusual thing you've ever netted?
I guess about a 3.5 or 4 foot shark.
Did he tear up the net?
He did. But I got him.
Playing down here at the beach was all we did during the summer, and he took us out in the boats and took us cast netting, and so we had a lot of time to spend together, and that was real special.
Three women with a love for the art of weaving have opened a shop at Railroad Square called Cascade. It's a small retail outlet where you will find the tools that provide a thread to the days before factory mass production.
Cascade is a retail shop that has all types of fibers for the spinner, for the weaver, for the knitter, crocheter, for the basket maker. And we have not only supplies, but handcrafted objects as well.
Fiber arts encompass all of the arts that have anything to do with any kind of fiber. It's a very broad range. It includes the traditional methods of needlework, needlepoint and crochet and knitting and weaving, and it includes basketry. And there is a lot of there's a lot you can do with it. A lot of different structural forms that you can do, and fibers can be anything. They can be natural fibers, they can be synthetic. Some of the companies that we get supplies from are now stocking metallic yarns, which are real interesting to work with. So it's just a whole range of methods and ideas.
This is spinning with a spinning wheel, and it's a small wheel. It's not the big wheel, but it will do wool that I'm using now, and it will do flax, which makes linen. It'll do silk, and it will do cotton. So any of the fibers that it'll even do synthetic fibers. So any of the fibers that you start with, you can end up with yarn. And then the yarn can be used for whatever craft you use store-bought yarn for.
This is the beginnings of an Appalachian melon basket. These were utilitarian baskets that were used in the Appalachians for carrying things. They also are called egg baskets because they were good for carrying eggs. This is a modern example of one, and they're very roomy and very sturdy, and they will last for years and years. Most of the basket styles we show are Appalachian, and a lot of the styles people brought with them when they came to the U.S. You can see the same kind of baskets in Ireland and Scotland. And we have taken the traditional basket forms and we have changed them a little bit. We don't use just the traditional materials. We have started using wools in the baskets, and seagrass, which is a special grass just for an accent. We gather some of our own materials. The vine that I've used for this is Elia agnes, which I collected here in town, and you boil it and process it and make your rims. So we do some of our own collecting, and then we get some of our materials from suppliers throughout the country.
The weaving that I like to do is on the 4-harness loom, and it is technical, it is intricate, and it's fascinating to watch the pattern and your design develop. And then when you take the cloth off the loom for whatever you intended it, to go ahead and finish it, whether you're using it for clothes, for a wall hanging, for fabric, for a piece of furniture, whatever. I think it's just the whole process of designing and figuring out all the threads that you have to put on and making the pattern come up. Working with colors. Colors just really excite me.
For me, it was to calm my nervousness. I've always been interested in handicrafts. I've always crocheted and sewed, and about 3 years ago I was very interested in learning how to weave. And I took some instruction and was even more interested, and from weaving I graduated to wanting to know how to spin my own yarn for weaving, so I learned how to spin. And then the basketry was just an offshoot of the weaving too. It was just another way of making something functional and using my hands so I wouldn't go crazy.
I love it. Some days when you come home and you've had a hectic day and you're all tense and uptight, you can sit down, you can sit at your spinning wheel and you can just travel just as fast as you want to. And you just get all that tension gone. And sometimes the weaving is like that too. If you're at a certain point and you can throw the shuttle back and forth, and it's not only a release of tension, but it's creating. It's doing something with your time besides sitting there in front of the TV and just watching TV.
I feel like as people become more energy conscious, weaving and all the fiber arts are going to become more important. Even here in Tallahassee, there's been an increase in people who want hand-woven items for their home, as mainly for just the aesthetics, but also just for the insulation ability of wall hangings and screens. And I think that people are looking for some way to use their hands to do something useful again, so that they have an outlet for their creative expression. And I think that's real important these days. And this is one way of doing it that's fairly inexpensive, and you end up with an end product that you can use and be very proud of.
Americans are accustomed to seeing Made in Japan printed on many available products. Well, now, thanks to the international nature of the work done at the Rose Printing Company of Tallahassee, Japanese shoppers can read "Printed in the USA" on their saver booklets.
Rose Printing Company is not only one of the largest industries in this area, it is the single largest producer of stamp saver booklets in the world.
Rose Printing Company is a book manufacturer. We manufacture books of all shapes, sizes, and quality levels, all the way from the saver stamp book that you glue your green stamps into, up to the coffee table variety collector books.
Rose Printing Company was established in 1932 by Sam Rosenberg, who was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and was affiliated with Stein Printing Company, which was a large printing company there. And he used to make trips down to this area fishing. And on one of those trips, he passed by the old Appleyard Printing Company and noticed that it was closed. He became interested and pursued the purchase of Rose Printing Company.
Under the direction of the Rosenberg family, the company has grown into the largest specialty printer and book manufacturer in the Southeast. For half a century now, the Rose Printing Company has been a landmark in Tallahassee, and their reputation for fine craftsmanship is known throughout the country and all over the world.
In the early days, Rose Printing Company was known mainly as a, quote, state printer, because the majority of our volume was comprised of state-type work, being leaflets, saddle-stitch booklets, a few hardbound books. Whereas today, we are international. We deal in Canada and Japan, as well as the United States. We have grown from a very small plant in an old building downtown across from the Capitol to this building that we moved into in the fall of 1960. We added on to it in 1976, and we added on again in 1979, and to the point now where we are double the size that we had when we originally moved out here.
Approximately 90% of the work is outside the state of Florida, coming from New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, California, Japan, Canada, and of course surrounding states around Florida, in Georgia. And we do a reasonable amount of work in the city of Tallahassee as well as the state of Florida.
Most of the stamp producers in the United States and stamp consumers, we print books for them. 170 million saver books a year. And that's only one of our product lines. And we can produce, I would say, in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 million case-bound books and hardbound books.
We're looking for specialty markets in each one of our categories, whether it be trading stamp booklets, mini books, or high-quality case-bound books. We are looking for those customers who, of course, would publish those. For the most part, we specialize in mini books, which are 3.5 by 5.5 inches in size, in perfect bound as well as case bound, and then high-quality coffee tabletop books, which might be referred to as collector's books.
How many people does the company employ?
176.
That's a pretty large family.
Well, they are like my family, each and every one of them. And I'm like an old mother hen about them. I care about them, and I care about Rose Printing Company. And together, we shall succeed.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for being with us. Join us again next week when we continue to revisit some of our friends from previous journeys. Until then, from all of us, good night.